All right, guys. So I have a very special guest with us today. This is my good Judy here. This is Amy. Amy, hi. How are you?
Hi, I'm well. How are you?
Good. Thank you for agreeing to sit down with me. We were discussing prior to this because I had put some feelers out there to the Facebook hive mind, asking what are some phobias and fears that people have, and I got a lot of responses to it. A lot of different answers. I now have some new fears myself based on those answers. But you were the only one who responded with death. And I found that really interesting because, like you had said earlier, you're the only one that at least went there. And I think that death is a big one for, I would guess, everybody to some extent or another. Maybe some people cope with it better than others. But I think death is a primal fear that only gets more exacerbated as we get older and we have to come face to face with our mortality. So I really wanted to kind of sit down and pick your brain a little bit, because there's a lot of reasons that death scares us. And a lot of them can be very personal, and some of them are overarching, kind of like, oh, we're not here forever, blah blah blah. But sometimes people have different reactions to things that have happened to them in the past. So I wanted to know, what makes you afraid of death?
Yeah, what a great question to unpack. So I'll start this by saying that I am an only child, and I am fairly close with my parents, and none of my grandparents are alive anymore. And I was fairly close with like my grandmothers at some point in my life, but my parents were a little older when they had me. Therefore, I was on the younger side when grandparents passed away. All that being said, I used to say like, oh, I have led a very boring life. Like I haven't had much happen to me, but I've learned to kind of change that perspective. And I've realized that I've been lucky that I haven't had, a lot of, traumatic things happen to me. Of course, I've had some trauma in my past, as we all have.
Yeah.
But I haven't had any major deaths happen in my life. Knock on wood. Even saying that gets me paranoid. And I'm also going to preface this with, I am a worrier, and I have been for a long time.
Oh, absolutely. I 100% agree. Like in the time I've known you, you've always been one of the strongest people I've ever known.
I worry. Oh, that's so sweet. I meant worrier, but I love that you heard warrior.
I know.
Okay.
I heard worrier. And I stand by my statement. You're one of the strongest people I've ever known because you worry about so many people in this amazing, I'm going to use the word motherly way now that you are a amazing mother. But just the way you interact with all of your friends, and you worry about people's happiness, you worry about people's well-being. It takes a lot of strength to be able to do that. Not everybody can do that. You're incredibly strong for that. But yes, I agree. You are a worrier. And I think that's why we've always gotten along. I do a lot of the same thing.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And it's so funny because I was just worried like, oh, he misheard me. He heard me say warrior.
You're a warrior too.
Yeah, I would say that 40 hours of labor, I could say a warrior. Yeah, I think
Closest thing I've ever had was a bad night with Chipotle.
Potato. But all of this to say, I didn't realize how much of a worrier I was until I was older. But a specific moment I remember that like kind of catapulted this fear of death, and it's really specific. So again, my parents are a little older. They were like the older parents, but they've always been in good health. Again, knock on wood. But I remember having this specific dream, and I've told my dad about this before. My dad used to ride motorcycles, like he has his since he could drive, and he still does in his late 70s. But I remember specifically we had this cabin that we would stay at on Sundays. And I remember in this dream that my dad drove his motorcycle to the cabin. And when he was leaving, he got stung by a bee. This is the odd part. He got stung by a bee and collapsed and died next to his motorcycle.
Wow.
And I just remember, and this was at like a young age. I can't remember what age, but just I still see like the visual of it. And from that moment on, like I feel like I worried about my parents dying. Like even thinking about it a little bit would make me really emotional. Like I couldn't even think about it. And it wasn't until like I met Dylan, my current husband, where I was relieved of some of that worry. I mean, I don't get as emotional like I used to. I mean, I would start crying in the moment if I thought about it even a little bit, or even talking about the fact that I can talk about this without like fully crying is growth from when I was younger. But I think what's helped is finding a life partner that, I won't be alone if something happened to them. Like it would still, but I haven't had to go through that process of losing someone so close to me and dealing with that. So there's the, can I get through this part? Like, I don't think I could get through this. And then now it's kind of morphed into something a little bit different. I used to be scared of my parents dying. And while there still is that fear, I know it's more inevitable as they get older. But now I'm afraid of dying. And I always have been, just the finality of it, and to be here one moment and not the next, like mentally here, like scares the shit out of me. Just to like tomorrow, I could not be just thinking about my presence on this earth and the different things that could happen to me in a moment's notice, or it's just terrifying to me. And the finality of it, and not being present, and now being a mother, like this is where I'm gonna tear up.
That's okay.
And obviously, like, there's obvious sadness, like not being with Dylan, my husband. But that fear of not being there for my kid terrifies me.
Yeah.
Like, not only how will it affect him in his life, like I know Dylan would do a great job raising him, but like, that's really scary. And I know it happens all the time, but I haven't had to go through it, so it is unknown to me.
Yeah.
And the unknown part of death is what's scary. So
yeah, very much so. Like to some extent, the unknown of anything can be terrifying, but when it's something that is so final, it just kind of doubles down on it. But I think you hit on a couple of really good points. The main one for me being that the fear of death is not just the fear of dying. It's not just, I'm afraid to die. It's, I'm afraid I'm going to leave my child alone. I'm afraid I'm going to leave my spouse alone. I'm afraid of, what my life will be like without my parents. It's not just about us dying, it's about others dying as well. And the effect that can have, the spiraling kind of downward effect of what's going to happen if I'm no longer here. How am I going to cope if someone else is no longer here? I think that's can be terrifying to think about. I go through a lot of the same existential kind of crises in that I'm terrified of losing my husband. I'm absolutely mortified of it.
Oh yeah, scared. Yeah, scared of losing Dylan. Yeah. With the older we get, health. Certain things come to light health-wise, and just yes.
I mean, and I'm also afraid of leaving Neil too soon. Like I don't want to leave him alone to his own devices, because he'll just buy so many plants. And
he will get swallowed up by plants.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm terrified of that. But I don't know what my life would be without him at this point. I don't want to find out. I flat out told him I want to die first. And maybe that's selfish of me, because I'm not actually wishing that pain on him. But I think he's stronger than me.
Yep.
And I think he would handle it better than I would be able to handle his loss. But that effect of leaving somebody alone or being left alone, I think is a huge factor. I was also reading, and kind of to turn this a little bit around into a slightly more lighthearted version of death. I was doing some research earlier today, and the fear of death has a direct correlation to midlife crisis.
I'm not midlife yet, but yes.
Have you looked at the current lifespans?
You stop it. You shut your mouth.
But people make these incredibly rash decisions when they hit that midway point, and they're like, ooh, what have I done with the first portion of my life? I don't have any more of that. I only have an unknown amount of time to come. And that's when we get those expensive cars purchased. Things like that. But it can also lead to incredibly rash decisions with money, with social interactions and things like that when you hit that. And it all kind of stems back to that fear of death. And if I were to die today, have I lived a life that I would be proud of?
Yeah. And here's the thing, I'm going to compare it to giving birth. So like the main thing that held me back from having a child was the actual the physical giving birth part. Like that was like, I don't know if I could do that. I can't fathom what that is like. And once I knew, like, okay, I think I'm ready, and my husband and I, and I got pregnant, I had 9 months. Now, this is a little different, but like, as the 9 months went on, I became pretty quickly much less scared of the giving birth part, because I was witnessing my body, my organs literally moved out of the way for this child to grow inside of me. Like I was growing a human inside of me. My body was morphing into this vessel to feed and help this thing grow inside of me. And that was really empowering, actually.
Yes. Yeah.
And it made me so much less afraid of the actually giving birth part, because I'm like, you know what? This is what my body was made to do. And so many people have dealt with this. I'll deal with it too. Now, I tell myself this about death as well. And like having talked with my parents and most recently my dad about death, who is not scared of it at all. He sees it as like, it's like when you fall asleep and you just don't wake up. Super peaceful. Like, I feel like the closer you get, like the older you get, the more at peace you become with death. And that I think I'm not my father, but especially the older you get, like Dylan's grandfather is 92. And he's like, once Kayla gets married, I'm ready to go. Once she has her kids, I'm ready to go. Like, he is like, it's going to happen when it's going to happen, and it's going to happen soon. He's more ready for it than we are. And I feel, and I hope that's true. Like, the closer you get to it, the more accepting, and I don't want to say welcoming of it. That feels weird to me to say that.
Yeah.
But that's what's interesting. But I'm just, the worrier in me won't get there.
Yeah.
For a while.
And I don't think we should have to for a while, because we have time.
And also the other thing I was going to say was, and I'm not, and we've talked about this, I'm not a religious person. Spiritual, yes, but I get why people are religious, because there is a sense of like, I believe in this is what's going to happen to me, that's very black and white to me, and that's very hopeful and reassuring to people. Yeah. So especially when traumatizing deaths happen, I get why people become much more religious. It's a way to cope. It's a way to heal. Mm-hmm. It is really comforting to think like, I will just be watching after my kid and Dylan when I die. And the last thing I'll say is I had, so I teach neurodivergent kids and adult social skills. And I had a kid tell me that how he sees death, or how he's seen it before, is that this life we're living right now is just one of a million lives. This same life we've lived a million times. And deja vu is just us remembering a past life and how the same situation happened, but in a different way.
Yeah. That idea. And I'm the same way. I'm not a religious person in the slightest. I can understand why a lot of people hold on to these beliefs, because they are a coping mechanism. They can, used correctly, they can be very helpful and healthy.
Yes.
So
that's the key. Yep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. But so that brings me to my final question for you. How do you cope?
I don't.
There's
don't
no
think
wrong
about
answers.
Well, it depends. Not to think about it. Not to get into my head about it. I mean, that's a lot of, if I allow myself to worry about it, I could spiral. If I allow myself to spiral, it will happen. So when it made me vulnerable immediately, I just refused to think about it. I shut it down. I put up that Midwest wall.
Gotta love that
you're
Midwestern
probably familiar with. Yeah. And now I try to, like, talking with my dad about it was really, was cathartic. So if I'm in the headspace to talk about it, that is another way to get out of my head. One way is shut it down. Don't let myself spiral. Another way is to get out of my head by verbally talking about it and joking about it.
Yeah.
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 And
no, absolutely.
and trusting that people will be okay when I'm gone.
Yeah. Yep.
And also, I'm still figuring out like what would make me feel comfortable. Like, what would it feel like? I have no idea. So just coming up with, different ways in that moment mentally to think about what would it feel like,
Yeah.
I used to think that heaven is whatever we want it to be. That's like everyone has their own heaven. It's whatever we want it to be. It's whatever you picture.
Yeah. No.
And now I don't know if I. Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say mine is not appropriate to talk about.
Is it being at the beach?
Sure. You got it.
So it depends on the day. It depends.
Yeah.
And it will continue to change as I get older. And I think raising my son, my kid, to be somebody who will be okay.
Yeah.
When I'm gone.
You got a lot of time left with him. Don't worry.
I hope so.
You're too stubborn to die. All right. Well, I want to thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I want to thank you for taking the time. I know this was a very difficult topic. And so it means all the more to me that you were willing to open up about it. And like you said, talking about it can be very cathartic for us. And I hope the goal of my channel is to help others. And I hope in some way this helped you, because I know it helped me.
Yeah, no, I think this is great. Working with, talking about mental health is so important. It doesn't need to be. It doesn't need to be closeted. Talking about it helps. It helps people learn and grow, and helps yourself learn and grow, and get out of your head about it, and to know that you're not alone and whatever you're going through. So no, I think this is important. And me, I'm an open book. I love talking about tough stuff.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you taking the time. And just remember that everything to some extent is going to be final, but that doesn't mean it's the end. And
that's interesting.
Take comfort in the people you have now, because that's what we have currently.
Yes,
and I love
that's another way to cope. I love you too.
Yeah,
being in the moment. Yeah, that's another way to cope. Force yourself to be in the moment.
Yes.
Yeah. So, I love you, Timmy.
I love you too. Thank you for taking the time. I'm going to hit stop recording here. And we're just gonna